Hello, happy Monday, and welcome to the Space Madness podcast. This is your host, Jeff Nasanov. And today with us, we have Fraser Cain, 27-year experienced space journalist, publisher of Universe Today, and co-host of Astronomy Cast. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me. Although this is funny, though, because it's like I just had you on my podcast.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah, we're kind of like the AI and infrastructure companies that pay each other.
Is that how this works?
Circular financing.
Yeah, one of those snakes eating its own tail.
Yeah, but I don't think you and I have the power to crash the economy yet.
No.
But other than that, I really wanted to talk with Fraser because I think it's very important to tell space stories. Obviously, I have this podcast. I can't say that I am especially good at it, though I try to improve. But from the journalism side, I jumped at the chance to interview you because I would love to hear how you got into it and how that has changed, how the messaging has changed, how engagement has changed, and so on as time goes on and different generations age out and age into, the kind of media that you produce.
It's sad that I've been able to watch generations come and go.
Well,
yes.
It happens to the best of us. I mean, it beats the alternative.
Yeah, death comes for us all. Yeah.
Yeah. But so that's really what I wanted to talk about, because I think it's really important that the people doing the space work communicate why and how and what's in it for everyone else. And I don't think NASA always does a very good job.
Right.
And I think the better wisdom we all have, the more we can share the joy and wonder that, like, for example, that I have in the space world with the people who I want it to resonate with. So that's what I hope we can talk about.
Sure. Yeah. You threw a bunch of things there. Where would you like to start?
Well, I think I'd like to start with how you got into this and how you got started and why.
Sure. Yeah. So I like many of you, I'm sure, I've always been a giant fan of space and astronomy. As a little kid, I would read books about space. I owned my own telescope and I would have it set up at night and showing my friends and family. I watched lots of science fiction, played space video games, read science fiction books. And even when I was in high school, I was on the journalism program for my high school and was reporting. I had a column about what you could see in the night sky every week. So it was quite funny. And then I went to university for engineering and then eventually ended up in computer science, but was always thinking about space, reading books about space. And I realized, and I think this is something that I suspect a lot of people will find very familiar, is that you get to this place where you realize that you're no longer keeping track of what's going on, that you have these experiences that you gained as a kid when you learned about the planets, when you were watching the Voyager missions, or depending on what age people are at. And then at some point, your knowledge kind of ossified and you're like craving bringing it back up to date. And so I was working at a web development agency in Vancouver at the time and had this emotional kind of reaction to that. I don't know what I used to know. I don't even know what's happening anymore. And I said, well, I'm going to try and keep track of it now. And of course, the web developer in me goes, well, let me build a website to share what I'm learning and experiencing. And that was sort of the beginning step of it. And I started Universe Today, registered the domain name, started to report on stuff that was happening that I found interesting. And within like 2 years, a year, I was like, okay, no, this is all I want to do for the rest of my life. And so now it's a question of how do I turn this into a legitimate career and how do I extract myself from being a corporate,
Sure.
tech executive.
So what year was that?
That was 1999 was when I founded.
Okay, so the ideal time to start a special interest website and really with a strong foundation for growth. That's fantastic. So I'm trying to remember how we even marketed websites back then. I mean, how did you just put it up and people found it on the early search engines?
Yeah. I mean, I think the theory that I had was that all of my clients, they wanted us to build them websites and we would just build the website and then it was like a brochure where we would walk away and it was done. And my operating principle was, no, this is a living, breathing thing. It needs to be updated every single day. And so I started an email newsletter. I started to update the website every day. And yeah, search engines picked it up. I got more and more just word of mouth. And then over time, there were other tools came along. Like this was pre-Google, right? So then Google was able to, Google loves a website that gets updated on a regular basis. And then, as you mentioned in the intro, around 2007, we started to get into podcasting. I started the Astronomy Cast podcast with my co-host, Dr. Pamela Gay. And then 2012, started doing video. And this all just kind of leads back to the source, which is our reporting at Universe Today. I was writing every story on Universe Today until maybe 2005, 2008, and then started to bring on other writers.
Okay.
And then started, now I don't do any of the writing on the website itself. I just manage the writers and do all my reporting generally through the interviews that I do.
Okay.
Which is how we met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's funny is you must have found the NASA page and then reached out to me, but I had actually cold reached out to you, and I don't think those two crossed.
Wow.
But I was happy to hear from you anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, back in the late 90s, I know what missions and things you were reporting on, probably a lot of Mars stuff, Pathfinder. And I'm curious, what sort of engagement did you find, and did you have to kind of speak to the audience in a certain way, or were you just stating just the facts, ma'am, kind of approach?
Yeah, I don't think that much about it. Actually, I have literally no idea how to sort of answer that question. I think I approach things from my curiosity. What do I want to know more about? And there's a very, very specific kinds of stories that I'm interested in. I'm looking for stuff that breaks new ground, or a really clever idea to solve a long-standing problem, or what is a new telescope that's going to offer additional functionality and capabilities. The NIAC Awards, the NASA Innovative Advanced Concepts, they're catnip to me because they are out-of-the-box ideas where you can kind of wrap your mind around how cool the idea is. And that is, wouldn't it be incredible if you had a pair of radio telescopes that were operating at a baseline of 9 million miles and had, and then you could observe the largest black hole in the universe. Wouldn't that be cool? Right. And that you can sort of find those ideas. And those are the kinds of stories that I like to tell. And then I sort of, over the years, have kind of dialed in what I consider to be the knowledge level of the audience. They are scientifically literate, but they aren't necessarily deeply knowledgeable about the ins and outs and the nuanced technological terminology of the science. And so I don't have to explain what the scientific, I don't have to justify or rationalize the scientific method or the importance of this kind of stuff, or why space exploration is meaningful, or all this kind of stuff. I just get into what is the discovery, what is the instrument, what is the gap that is trying to be closed, and then, what is the new result, and put it in context as much as I think is relevant, and then provide that to the audience. And this is a sort of a standard style that we do across the website with all the writers do this at this point. Yeah.
Very interesting. I think that I speak to as many different audiences as I can, and I often find walls and obstacles that I wasn't expecting. But it sounds like what you're saying is, from the beginning, you kind of said it the way you wanted to, and the right audience found it.
That's right. Yeah. I think to be able to do a job for a long time, it has to be entertaining to you. And so for me, the thing that is most entertaining is to follow my curiosity about the things that I don't know as much about it as I would like to. And that the information that I am providing through the various media that we use is me closing the gap of my knowledge. I'm taking an idea that a concept, little red dots, dark matter, dark energy, fast radio bursts, the Artemis 3 program, whatever, right? And finding experts and reporting on it until I feel like I've leveled up my understanding of this specific thing. And then I just find another one, and I find another one, and it's just this process. And I spend very little time thinking about what are the expectations of the audience, because I think you'll just kind of go crazy if you do that.
Sure.
And instead, I follow my curiosity and trust that some portion of the audience wants to go there too and finds that compelling.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really a lot of parallels with my podcast, certainly, but with the way I've approached my career, starting as early as soon as Wikipedia came out in the late 90s, and I could read about relativity or black holes or whatever, and augment that later with more formal stuff. But certainly with my podcast, I have the same approach, where I want to talk to interesting people, interesting stories until I'm done.
Yeah.
And it remains to be seen if doing that starting in 2025 can build the organic audience that starting in 1999 did, but we shall see.
Yeah. I mean, I think we stand at a very strange crossroads right now with the rise of artificial intelligence, and that the quality of AI as a tool to try and teach you something. Like if you want to learn and understand some concept, AI is pretty good at this point. The hallucinations are mostly tamped down. Its ability to find you sources and give you that information is pretty good. and that if you want to deeply understand a topic, it's a good scaffolding to bring you along with it. And I think where it fails is having any shred of personality or nuance or of it being interesting to listen to. Like it's awful, just terrible. And so right now you can say, well, like this is how it's always going to be. And that's possible that it will just never be better, or they'll solve this problem. And then maybe it's a genuine risk for a person who's trying to create information. But I think right now there is a craving for a human voice, for people who are doing the work and actually finding the people and doing the interviews and leveling up their knowledge and sharing what they're finding, that you can provide almost like these oases from the bland marketing / open AI, just gibberish. So I think, people always say it's too late. They said that back in 2007. They said that, I've been this entire time, people are like, oh, it's too late. And then you watch people pick, the whole rise of all the people on Substack and people are doing blogging again and email newsletters and YouTube and podcasts, and all of these revolutions just keep happening because the audience is always there. The audience is always hungry for knowledge, for information. They especially appreciate when someone does a good job of communicating that information in a human form and are rankled by the bland, automated techno gibberish. So I think as long as, like, when the robots do our job better than we can, then there's a risk. But right now, I do not see that in the least. They are laughably bad. Like it's this, and I don't know what your experience is, but I'm like reading a post and I'm like, okay, this was written by ChatGPT. I'm out, right? I don't want to read another word of it because it's just like, if you didn't bother taking the time to write it, I don't want to read it.
Yeah. A couple of things come to mind. I wonder if people back in the 14th century when the printing press was invented were saying this thing is going to take the humanity out of whatever reporting, whatever newsletters, whatever reporting was done. I think we might have talked about this, or it might have been someone else, where for 1,000 years, a reliable job was copying the Bible by hand, and I'm sure the first printed Bible probably was a novelty and someone's, this will never catch on. But I do wonder whether the line from that invention to large language models is a direct line, or whether large language models are something parallel or something orthogonal. I don't know yet.
Yeah. I don't spend too much time trying to predict where it's going to go. I think it is right now. It's just hot steaming garbage to read. And it has been for its entire lifetime. That it has gotten to be a better writer technically, but it is still awful to read. And as soon as you recognize its patterns and you see them everywhere, you don't want to spend another second reading it. So if it can introduce new novel patterns that are genuinely surprising and interesting to read and is telling you compelling stories and has, like if they figure that out, then there might be a risk to human as communicator. But for now, I don't see any risk of it in the current state. But I'm open, and I've always said, like, when it genuinely does a better job than me, then I will step off the field.
Sure.
But I'm not going to step off the field when there is like all of this hype and fear that it's maybe going to do a better job than us, that we should be worried. No, like, you've got stories to tell, you've got audiences to speak to. Why would you silence your voice because you have this worry that some amorphous computer terminator is going to show up and write better prose and crush skulls with its robot foot?
Sure. And I think it depends on what you're looking for. For example, if someone wanted to read the definition of space journalism, they could Google it and the AI would assemble a half-page definition with some examples. But presumably, people are coming to this episode for the overt personal story of you or of someone in the field. And every personal story is going to be different to the point where an AI assimilated summary of it is not what that audience is looking for. And I agree with you, trying to chase the audience is a fool's errand, at least in the long term.
Yeah. Like, if I want to know how to replace a plug on my wall, I want to be able to have it adapt to my very specific circumstances. Yeah. Then the writing from Google's search engine is going to be appropriate.
Yeah.
Sure, fine, right? Like it's a one-time off. I just need to replace this plug. I don't
Right.
need a history. That's it. I'm not going to have an ongoing relationship with the plug replacer blog.
Right.
But for something where it is your entertainment, it's something you're increasing your knowledge in the world, you want to trust the capabilities and the sort of underlying, I don't know, reliability of the team, then that's where you're going to choose humans.
It's funny you said reliability, because I think one objection to all of this would be, well, humans make mistakes, in substantive ways. And I think still, this may change as the generation's gone, but I still think I'd rather have a human error than a machine error, or the possibility of one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the kind of error, but we see all of these like ChatGPTs breaking into, like that's an error, that's a felony error that you don't want to have happening. You don't want errors, and I think that all of these tools can be used to help you eliminate your errors. We already use grammar checkers to like, people don't complain about my grammar anymore because I run a grammar check pass through everything I write. I make sure that nothing gets rewritten out of my voice or throws in any additional thing. But if I get my its and my its wrong, there, and there, I want that to be sorted out for me, because I will always make mistakes. So I think that there are ways that you can use tools like this to help you, do better work, but that is different from the genuine voice that is coming through on how you're writing. And so I think you just have to separate them in your mind on how you approach this, that the thing that must remain sacrosanct is your voice, is how you express and share what you have to say with the world, both the topics that you choose, the what you're covering, what you're trying to, what sort of, I don't know, like just what larger message you're trying to share. Like the message that I'm trying to share is one of curiosity and creativity, and just how exciting it is to be living in this moment in time where we are right on the cusp of us. We are living in the golden age of astronomy and space exploration. We are learning more about the universe every day than we ever did at any point in the history of humanity. New telescopes are coming online almost every month, and a collection of gigantic observatories are in the final stages of construction or have already come online. And we are here present in this moment while the boundaries of our vision are being pushed out to the very edge of the universe. This is all really exciting to me, and I want to share that enthusiasm with the world.
Completely agree, and not just the boundaries of our vision, but the media, such as gravitational waves and other things that we could never see before. And
neutrinos. It's incredible
how all that is going to get combined into insights. I mean, that's a big motivator for my project.
Yeah,
but getting back to the sort of space journalism journey, I'm curious. It's interesting that you really haven't ever targeted for the audience, but I'm curious if over the years the audience has changed in ways that you might reflect on, maybe culturally or just, as the years have gone on.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry to give you this answer, right?
No,
Which
that's
is
okay.
that, my audience kind of self-selects. So I, there are people who are really excited and interested and active on the various, in the comments on my YouTube channel, or sending me email of stories that they found interesting, or giving me feedback. And then they were interacting with me on social media, and then they fade away. And then others kind of take up that same role. And so from my perspective, I don't know, like imagine you're in a band and you're standing on the stage and you're looking out at the crowd, and there's a crowd there. And then you come back and now you're in another town and you look out and there's a crowd there. And, has the demographics of the crowd changed? You can't really tell, right? The point is that there's a crowd there, and you are performing for this crowd. And so I think I don't really have any sense of whether the audience has changed, the demographic has changed, the kind of people who are into it are different than the kind of people who use, like, it's just, there are always people, like, I always sort of use this analogy. You go to a cocktail party, and people ask you what you do, and you're like, oh, I'm a space journalist. And they're like, oh, I love space. And, my answer is always like, of course you do. Right? Everybody does.
Yeah.
Nobody hates space. They love space. Even the flat earthers and stuff, they love space.
Well,
they wouldn't be so obsessed with flat Earth and the firmament if they didn't love space or the moon
every
landings
day
or
for
whatever.
them is a chance to be proven right. So they got
about space.
They gotta love space.
This thing they love, right? So they love space. Everybody loves space, and so even people were there for the Apollo landings. People were there for the space shuttles. They were there for the shuttle disasters. They were there for the launch of James Webb. Like whoever you are, interesting things have happened in your life that have had an impact. You see the beautiful pictures in the background when you watch Star Trek: The Next Generation. You see like all of this stuff just feeds in constantly in this sort of self-referencing world. And so no, I honestly can't tell you that things have changed in any way, shape or form.
Well, my next question is going to be about the size of the audience. I imagine it's grown, but since you mentioned Star Trek: Next Generation, have you ever noticed in the opening theme, at least for season 1, there's a view of sort of flying through the solar system, right? But Neptune and Pluto are blurry blobs, and the other planets have the imagery from Voyager and others, and that's because we had not yet imaged those up close. And I almost nobody remembers this. And
89 for Voyager for Neptune,
and much later for
like 2018 for
for New Horizons, and
2015.
Yes, because almost nobody remembers it, even diehard Star Trek fans. But it really represents this interplay between real space exploration and storytelling. And with storytelling and astronomy being two of the oldest human jobs ever in all civilizations, to me that just connects. But I find it really interesting and helpful that your answers about the changing audience actually, because that to me confirms, although perhaps confirming a bias, that there's always people out there interested in this stuff. There always have been, whether they were ancient Babylonians or, middle-aged peasants, what have you. It's a deeply human thing. And that was kind of the leap of faith that I bet on with this podcast, is that there's going to be people out there. There always are, always have been. But I'm curious that with the huge amounts of numbers that you may have behind you, I mean, did the audience grow in the ways you might have expected? I imagine you kept some track of that over the years.
Yeah. I mean, the problem always is that you are too reliant on the intermediaries like Google, like YouTube, like podcasting applications and their algorithms to decide whether or not you get to have an audience. So we could be having a really good, we get about 14 million page views on the Universe Today website every month. I've had upwards of a couple of million views a month on my YouTube channel. I think we get 150,000 listens on the podcast. I get about 70,000 people get my email newsletter every week. And the numbers just rise and fall depending on whether various algorithms are smiling on you or not.
So it's really more about that black box world than about actual space events or about actual
the things used to be very much about when space events were happening, the launch of James Webb, whatever, then people were hungry for information. But now, because there's so much intermediaries in between you and your audiences, a lot of people have no idea that they're viewing your website, right? A person will browse on Google News or Apple News on their phone. And they'll see a news story, and then they'll click through and they'll read the story, and they'll go, and they don't know where they were. And if you said, "Oh, what website did you just look at?" They're like, "I don't know," right? James Webb found something new. I didn't really watch it, or they see it takes a lot of time for people start to build a sense of who you are. And I do what I think it's very important for us to express our humanity through our work. That there is a name and a face and a voice that is tied to the mission. And that's why I embraced podcast and video early on, not because I love it, but because I think it's just really important that you be part of the story. But there's such a fraction of the people who interact with my content who have any idea who it is behind it. And I get a lot of times where people will listen to Astronomy Cast for, I don't know, 10 years. And then, and every couple of weeks I'll go, we did a new video and blah, blah, blah. And then people are like, I didn't even realize that Universe Today was you. Literally in every single episode of Astronomy, I am the publisher of Universe Today. And they're like, I had no idea that you were the guy behind Universe Today. So
Well, it speaks to the interesting way that our minds process or not information. Right. Like if I click on, there's this thing on Reddit that I haven't looked at out of, I don't know, sorrow, but it's something like intergalactic missile found on the surface of Mars by, and I'm like, a lot of people are going to get some fraction of their space knowledge is going to be informed by this.
Yes.
And they may come to meet my stuff later, and in their body of knowledge, as they approach what I hope to be, and I'll try to be a engaging but fact-based, evidence-based thing, that there's also a missile from an intergalactic war on Mars, and
Right.
and it's just an interesting. It's like when I remember when I met the first flat earthers I ever met in person, and it was before I ever worked for NASA, and it was fascinating that these real people who had all the same biological needs as everyone else, but their mind somewhere got that latched in there, and it never it gave them something that they could never let go of.
Yeah, and I consider that a bit of a pipeline that you're going to have this audience of people who only become interested because they are excited about the idea of UFOs. They, at some point they watched a documentary,
Sure.
they saw something on TV, and it got them excited about UFOs, and now they want to find out, like, where's the evidence of the UFO? Like now I want to see what we know about the UFOs, and all the roads lead nowhere because there is no evidence of UFOs, right? Nothing has ever been found, nothing has ever been seen.
Right.
That is reproducible, that scientists have been able to dismantle in the lab. Like all there is hearsay. And that only gets you so far. And I think there's going to be some group of people that will then start to run up against, we did a lot of videos about Comet 3I Atlas last summer, reporting on the really genuinely interesting stuff that was happening from this interstellar object, formed in another star system, making its way through the solar system. But it was rigorous, science-based. We were referencing journals, showing all of our receipts in this flood of nonsense that was happening on YouTube at the time. And so you would get this overlap. Someone would watch this video about saying that 3I Atlas has turned and is moving towards the Earth, and then they would first would watch that video, and then I would have all the science from 3I Atlas so far, and they'd watch my video. And then I would not bring up any of that. I would say, here's all the stuff that's been confirmed, and isn't this interesting? And on the one hand, you get like, I saw this other video, and I saw your stuff, and I'm not sure who to believe. Well, wait 6 months, and when it just keeps doing the things that I say it's going to do versus the stuff that they say it's going to do, you'll have your answer.
Yeah.
And so some percentage of those people will make that switch from, I was enticed by bombastic nonsense, switching over to actually the real science is kind of interesting to me and has rekindled my joy for space and astronomy. Those are the people that I'm trying to bring over to the good side. Yeah.
And it's interesting as you say that, recalling how you with that intention, you're still not choosing, you're not specifically targeting your audience, and the right people are finding you. Maybe it's the people who are just straddling the line of nonsense. You can maybe pull them into the evidence-based world. Yeah. And I don't know if that's the right approach, but I know that I can't do anything differently. Like the way my brain works, I can't. And it's funny because I will, people, you should really do a video about this because that would bring in, you should do a video debunking flat Earth, or you should do a video of debunking the moon landings were fake. I'm like, I don't want to. I just don't care. Like, it just doesn't bring me any joy. So I'm not going to, even though maybe it would. And there are plenty of people who make a lot of hay dunking on flat earthers or moon landing deniers, and it's just not interesting to me. And getting back to what sounds like is sort of a central theme to you is that humanity that the AIs can't replace, at least not yet. That joy that you take in your work comes out in the just the curiosity of the stories that when I discover something new and interesting and fascinating, I want to share it. And I hope that I'm coming across the same way. And when I learn something new, and it sort of gets mixed up in there with all the other stuff I know, that those moments of, maybe these things are connected. And 9 times out of 10, they're not. But 1 out of 10, I get the Nyack project. Yeah. Well, you put the dots together. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, you're actually putting this to work and potentially expanding human knowledge with an incredible interferometer that should show us an image of the largest black hole in the universe. Yes, please. I hope so. Yeah, it's the whole circle complete. Yeah. So I'm curious if so when I started this podcast for about 3 weeks, I tried to engage with every comment. And I quickly learned there's absolutely no way that works out well for anybody, because for the people that are reasonable, they don't need any response. And the people that aren't, any response is perceived as, they're being right.
Yeah.
But I'm curious over, with the much larger team that you have over the years, if you've noticed any themes or changes in the kinds of engagement that you get, just like you get more cranks now, or now it's hard to draw any conclusions from that because like you said, it's even harder to know what pathway people are finding their way to you before. But I just wonder if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah. Again, there's a kind of a statistical normal level of cranks. Okay. So when I first started Universe Today, I would get a couple of emails a week from a person who has discovered the true nature of the universe, has overturned Einstein, has discovered a way of moving faster than the speed of light. And I still get them. Right. And so the number of cranks has not really changed. And then I think the sort of engagement on the online platforms, the comments that you get on YouTube and so on are rise and fall with depending on what's going on. So while people were convinced that 3i Atlas was an alien spaceship that was going to be invading the Earth, there was a lot of people really angry at me for not giving that as much energy.
Hiding it.
Yeah, from hiding it or just not engaging with that with that perspective. And I take the same attitude towards engagement with online audiences as I do with choosing my stories, which is like, if I'm enjoying myself, then do it. You should never feel obligated to have any conversation with a hater. And if a person gets mean, feel free to ban them, block them. They don't need, you don't need them in your life, right? These are guests you've invited into your home, right? And then they're going to overturn your plants and break your table. They can leave now, right? And they don't need to, and they need to never come back. So I think it's perfectly fine if a person is crossing the line for you to sort of prevent your own or sort of protect your own mental well-being. And then it's just, do you want to have conversations with these people? If you're having fun, if they've said something that really sparks your own curiosity, then engage. And if not, if you're feeling in a, I'd like to have a good time with some non-believers, then you can do that. But you should never feel obligated. And, it is one of the worst uses of your time.
Yes.
And yet
it's like arguing with politics.
Yeah. And we are exactly. And we are just like moths drawn to the flames. We can't help ourselves, right? Someone says, well, actually, space begins at whatever, right? 200 kilometers altitude. You're like, well, the Kármán line is this, designated by that, blah, blah, blah. And yes, everybody gets their astronaut wings and I don't make the rules, right? So that doesn't gain you any new followers, doesn't do anything other than you feeling like you have to lash out or you have to respond to something. And that time, the minutes spent could be better spent you digging through journals, finding more stories, engaging with people who are doing your deep, important work. Right. But we are human and we just can't help ourselves from being caught in these conversations. But try to protect your mental capacity as much as you can. Yeah,
I like you said I don't make the rules. I like to say I don't make the rules yet. But you mentioned something really interesting, that you mentioned journals, and I think over the years I've observed that I think a lot of people have simply never learned or been taught that there is actually a formal effort in most areas to understand how reality works. It's not that they don't believe in science. It's that no one ever taught them or explained to them, or they never discovered that there is an alternative to anecdotal evidence and just belief and I don't actually say that to disrespect or denigrate anybody. It's really more of a cultural thing, that if you don't grow up like being exposed to scientific conversations and, magazines, which is, I guess, a thing of the past, but you may well reach adulthood and not actually know there are 10,000 astrophysicists in some, cave in Russia looking for these obscure particles that may or may not interact, and I think the older I've gotten, it's been hard for me to really accept that, but I think it's true. And that's a large portion of the more argumentative people. And it's very hard to connect with someone who's already an adult with that, with that mindset.
Yeah. And I think that mindset doesn't come easily. And I can remember times when I didn't have it and I didn't realize how, I loved science. I loved space. I loved dinosaurs. I loved, there was all this stuff that I thought was really cool. but I didn't understand the methodology that humanity had developed to be able to gain this information. And it wasn't until I was in my maybe late teens, early 20s that I finally had sort of been exposed to enough people explaining how the scientific method works. You know, one of the most influential books that I ever read was Carl Sagan's Demon Haunted World, where he sort of explains this idea of how a scientist comes to a conclusion compared to how someone who is a pseudoscientist would come to a conclusion, building up evidence of what they're looking for. And that scientists, like the perspective of the scientist is, I need to prove my own ideas wrong first. Like, the idea should not even leave my brain or leave my lab if I am able to prove them wrong. And that is my first duty, is to prove my ideas wrong, so that I don't even bother telling anyone else, because I already did the hard work of knowing that this thing that I think or thought or this hypothesis that I had was wrong and incorrect.
Yeah.
And I have to be open-minded to every possibility that is out there, and that it's just a matter of ordering them in what I think is the most productive way for me to be able to kind of dig through them and disprove them one after the other. And then whatever remains is interesting enough that maybe I can then tell someone else and say, well, I found this result. I'm not sure it's real. Here's all the 10 ways that I think I'm wrong, but can you confirm this? Or can you check if any of the thing, those ways that I think I'm wrong? Yeah. And I think your average person has no idea that that's how a scientist thinks or works and how they interact with each other. Their expectation is that scientists approach problems in exactly the same way that regular people do, especially people who have, say, a religious upbringing, which is that you start with the faith, with the expectation that the thing that you believe is true.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that from that lens, when people are like, well, dark energy, scientists just made up this calculation to came up with this model to make their calculations work, that you are begging the question that you are sort of, that the scientists think that the outcome is what they're trying to aim towards. And then they're just trying to prove it. Climate change, vaccines. You could just run through every single nutritional information. You could run through every single scientific standard that exists today, every scientific consensus that is there. And if you talk to the public, they will say, well, that is, they knew that's what they wanted to get to, and therefore they are cooking the books, they are changing the numbers, they are rejecting the evidence that does not conform to their beliefs. But the reality is that is not how scientists work. Scientists work in the exact opposite way. Right. Deeply skeptical, throwing out believing the evidence, trusting the evidence, and throwing out any hypothesis that does not withstand the scrutiny. Yeah. And they're willing to change their mind on a dime the moment new compelling evidence comes along that disproves their hypothesis. You have these examples with plate tectonics, where people were on one side of plate tectonics, people on the other side, and the moment the good evidence showed up, many of the people just switched sides. Like, you're right.
Even dinosaurs. The founding fathers had no idea dinosaurs ever existed. Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah. And so all of the time, I think most people's experience with, and yet we do science all the time in our lives. Where did I put my car keys? Right. Did I put my car keys in my pocket? Nope, they're not there. Did I put my car keys? Are they still in the car? Nope, they're not there. You're working through your hypotheses from the top to the bottom, disproving them until you find your car keys. Right. Like that is the scientific method in action. Well, and yet most people think that is not how science works. They think that science works the way many philosophical situations work, or how religion works, where you believe an outcome, you have faith that a thing is true, and then you look for confirmation to reinforce your faith. And I think that is the heart of it. And so often I'm trying to tell that story. I'm trying to reinforce, like, if there's a point that I try and reinforce, it is the scientific worldview is very different from what most people expect. And if I can get through to them then I feel like that's a win.
And I think that the human nature is actually that the thing you believe in the most, the hardest, is true. That's our nature. That's not real, but that's our nature. And it probably worked really well 100,000 years ago, at least as well as anything was going to work. That if you believe in the biggest guy in the group, you'd probably make it to tomorrow. more than the other guy. But one thing I like to use with the receptive audience is the following story from World War II. Actually, there's two. In the course of my NIAC project, I've read a lot about the early 20th century black hole discussions, or so what they called then a frozen star. I learned that Albert Einstein was absolutely positive that black holes could not exist because he did not think matter could compress like that. And that Robert Oppenheimer, before the Manhattan Project, was working on black holes and the physics around them. I had no idea that went all the way back into the 30s. But here's my favorite story from World War II about the thinking, scientific thinking or lack thereof. Maybe that's something we can bring our discussion to a close on. So apparently at that time, there were a lot of fighter aircraft that were being shot down, and in some particular group. And one of them, and among the ones that returned to the base, they basically said, okay, let's look at this thing and figure out why it returned. What can we learn from it? And they had, I'm paraphrasing it, but they had an engineer, a mathematician, something like that, the classic setup. And they looked at it and they said, okay, the wings are full of holes. They got shot in the wings. We should put armor on the wings. And then the mathematician said, no, actually, the plane got home with the holes in the wings. We should put armor where there are no holes.
Yes.
And that apparently increased the rate of return. And so, of course, that seeing what's not there is one of those mental skills that has to be developed that I think goes a long way towards a scientific worldview.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seeing where you could be wrong, seeing the information you don't have,
mm-hmm.
and then trying to make a conclusion. I just love telling that story.
But I think, obviously it would be great if people could gain this understanding of statistical thinking, respect for that. But I think just like the first step is to perceive the work that scientists are doing in a new light, because then that will change your perspective on climate change, on vaccines, on economical issues, and especially on things like dark matter, dark energy, astronomical stuff, physics, you name it, right? That when there is a scientific consensus, that is something you should take very seriously. And I think for a lot of people, when I tell people that that all I do is look for the scientific consensus, if I'm not willing to go and spend a level of time to go get my bachelor's degree, get my master's degree, get my PhD, read up on the literature, understand the science to the depth that the climate scientists do, then the shortcut is to trust the scientific consensus. And people feel that is anathema. That rubs them the wrong way to say, the thing that you should do, most of the time, you can trust the scientific consensus, because it is generally you're boiling down the knowledge of 10,000 scientists on one topic. And
the way I apologize for interrupting, but I want to add this point right there, that the way a corollary to that is the alternative to that is your own bias. The alternative to the efforts of 10,000 people working together is something like your own bias or your own small exposure to a subject, or your
willingness to put in the time to raise your knowledge to the level of expertise that it actually does match the scientific consensus. And what will likely happen is you will walk out the other side of that journey agreeing with the scientific consensus, right? Because all of the things that you would have thought of, that you'd be thinking right now, well, why don't they just, what if it's this, what if it's that? Did anyone look at the temperature of the sun, right? All of that stuff has been exhaustively looked at, and you will come to the same result.
Right.
And I think that until we can get back to this place where there is an understanding of why the scientific consensus is a valuable thing, why it should be trusted, we're going to continue to live in this world where people are just hostile to expertise.
Yeah. Well,
and that's it's not going to help any of us.
That's it. And we're living in this unplanned measles experiment here in the U.S. right now.
Yeah. Vaccines are bad. We should be taking our measles vaccines. It's going to be bad for us. Right. Hey, everybody's got measles.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have stringent control over produce.
Food.
What do you know? Yeah. Everyone's got explosive diarrhea, right? Gut parasites.
Yeah.
So it's just that the scientific consensus is there because a group of people take this very seriously and put in the work. And it's your shortcut. And by all means, nobody's stopping you from going and getting the same level of education.
Go get a PhD and do some experiments.
Yeah. Do some experiments, get to that same level. And you don't even need to put in the 14 years. You could probably get to the level that they have in about 4 if you focus and don't bother going through the regular academic institution. You could probably get there to the point that you can do all the math, that you can replicate the studies, that you can speak at a level that they wouldn't know that you're not a scientist. You could probably get there, and then by all means do it. But you can't have it both ways. You can't both just automatically distrust the level of knowledge of the scientists and feel like you have some kind of path to truth, because you don't. You have a path to, as you said, your own biases. Your gut is not to be trusted. Right now, your gut is filled with parasites right? So now is the time, is always the time to understand how the scientific process works, and then to use that as a shortcut to getting to have a perspective on any topic in the world.
I love it. So I'm curious, as we reach the end of our time here, you mentioned earlier website, podcast, video. Where do you see the formats going for the kinds of communication that you're doing? What comes after video podcast?
I have no idea. Yeah.
I mean, the screens are getting smaller.
Yeah, I just roll
and
with
the attention spans are getting shorter.
I disagree. I disagree with that. I think that, again, it's self-referencing. Again, I feel like you're trying to predict where the puck is going to go, right? You're going to skate towards the puck. And the reality is you tell the stories, use your knowledge of the various media that's available to you to tell the stories that are a way that you feel like you can tell your story. And if it can be told in video, if it can be told on audio, if it can be told in print, if it can be told by you standing on a stage, then do that. And don't try to, because a lot of these formats are dead ends, and you will end up specializing in some dead end. Because you felt like that's how people, like, oh, kids these days, they don't have the attention spans of both, and so like, I'm going to learn how to be on the TikToks, and then you're not telling the story the way you think it should be told.
Yeah. I think that's an incredibly powerful lesson. And I thank you for sharing that, really a theme throughout all of my questions, which is that tell your story, tell the story you want to tell. And that is the core, regardless of audience and timing and formats. And I really appreciate that, actually, as a reminder of all the things that a person early on, like me, in this sort of communication journey, I could follow one of those, but I think you're absolutely right. And obviously the longevity and growth of your platforms is evidence of that. So I thank you for that. That's really helpful. Not the conclusion I thought I would come to. But I'd love to be wrong.
You're hoping the tips, like, oh yeah, TikTok's gonna be really big this year. Yeah.
I'm just curious how people answer that question, because I mean, we all have different exposure to different technologies, and somebody could say, well, pretty soon just beaming it straight in through the skull, and then you really have to have your tweet be 32 characters or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we have text, we have audio, and we have video. And video is really audio plus pictures, right? With pictures, audio, video, and you mix and match them anyway. So if you came up to me and showed me the new format, you said, well, here's the new format. It's like a really skinny banner that runs along, and all the kids are watching it. And they're like, okay, so that's the resolution. That's the runtime. Here's the platform. Here's how their social media things work. Okay, I got it. Right. I understand. Yeah. So the question is, can you tell stories? Can you follow your curiosity? Can you engage people in the underlying? Because those lessons will be timeless. Yeah. The formats don't really matter.
It reminds me of apparently there's a recent theory that the cave paintings 10,000 years ago, they were actually intended to be observed during firelight. So they were actually flickering. They were actually like animated with the shadows of it. So, and we really haven't come that far. We still have our voices and images and writing. So I think that's a great place to end it for today. I really appreciate your time and insight. So thank you for joining me.
Happy to be here.
All right. Take care.